Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date and help the channel grow. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And now, on with the show. You are listening to the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion with the one and only Gray. Greetings, opinion nerds. It is I, the one they call Gray, and today we're developing a plan to make up a bunch of stuff that might sound pretty real as we talk about the Warner Brothers DC entry Black Adam on this episode of Don't Look Back, coming up right now. You know, the truth is, not every contrivance goes according to plan, opinion nerds. All storytelling is a matter of contrivance. To contrive means to plan something. Sounds simple, right? Despite how we sometimes romanticize the process, writers don't open up a mystic portal and report the goings-on like an interdimensional journalist bringing you stories from the far reaches of space and time. The stories, narratives, and plots we all enjoy, or deride, are usually the result of hours upon hours of thought and energy, internal, sometimes external debate, and a lot of trying and failing until the writer feels they have a path laid out that will take the audience through the experience the storyteller wants to share. If you want to write, you have to contrive everything. Characters, relationships, actions, dialogue. If you want to tell a story, you have to contrive everything because stories are inventions of emotion, intellect, and craft. For a fiction storyteller, contrivance is the business. However, when we on the other side of the typewriter use the word contrivance, it usually has a more negative connotation. When we talk about contrivance or describe something as being contrived, we're taking the definition and using it against the work. Though a writer must contrive to create, the goal is typically to do so such that the contrivance is invisible. However, there are times when, for whatever reason, the illusion is broken and the hand of the storyteller spinning the wheels in the background becomes apparent. Contrivance can come in many forms, from the manner in which information is shared to the ways in which characters behave. But the one thing all contrivances have in common is that they somehow don't feel natural to the world or events of the piece, and they reveal the artificial nature of the work. All fiction is contrivance, but the deal we make with the writer is that they will do their best to hide all that so it's easier for us to believe in the created reality of the work. When that agreement is broken, the audience can lose trust in the storyteller, and once that trust is lost, it can be almost impossible to get it back. The people who produced Black Adam, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's foray into superhero movie making and his $7 Productions attempt to carve out a piece of the struggling but theoretically profitable DC universe, wanted to make a good movie. It's highly unlikely that you'll find anyone involved in a $200 million production that doesn't want it to be good, or at least good enough to make a profit. And to many, the film is entertaining enough to say they accomplished this goal. And like any film, the illusion only needs to work once for it to be considered successful on that level. Given the current day audience's propensity to make huge successes out of entirely mediocre films for the most superficial of reasons, it's difficult to say exactly why Black Adam wasn't a bigger hit, especially if you believe the ongoing narrative that critic reviews and Rotten Tomato scores don't actually influence audiences. That then brings up the question of exactly why it's so important to the distributor that we know those scores, that they put it on the poster, and it should make people like this writer question exactly what we're doing with our fucking time. There are mitigating factors that could have influenced the film's financial underperformance, from the ongoing shakeups at Warner Brothers Films leading to it being deprioritized as a franchise asset, to the oncoming expectation for the Black Panther sequel set to be released less than 2 weeks later, cutting into its box office legs. This is a discussion for producers, accountants, and marketing people, none of whom likely care about the film as a film as long as it makes money. And in truth, there are times when very good films don't find success for factors beyond the merits of the work alone. Sometimes it's a matter of timing, either within a release schedule packed with films with broader or family appeal, or just the general timing of the world's environment, the public not being in a place where it's prepared to process either what the movie is presenting or how. But no one seems to feel as if Black Adam, a film in development since the early 2000s, is a good film done dirty by bad timing or a critical audience unprepared to parse the film's creative offerings. No one has accused the film of having a grand artistic ambition it falls short of, or being confusing in terms of its intent or approach. At best, the film has been criticized for being an action spectacle that simply doesn't do anything spectacular. Some of this does fall on the shoulders of director Wami Koletsera, whose work is serviceable but uninspired. But most of it's going to fall on the screenplay and the path set for the film by its producer, Dwayne Johnson, whose marching orders for the film resulted from multiple false starts for the character and uncertainty about how the character was going to be placed in the franchise, and a need for Johnson as the film star to be sure he was presented a certain way. Despite a very slick and expensive look, all the issues culminated in a movie with an unfocused and uncommitted story with tenuous threads to an already confused narrative universe. Black Adam was a film that didn't quite know what it wanted to be in a narrative universe that no longer knew what it was. When you step back and look at it, the story of Black Adam is about an angry, grieving father who needs to deal with that grief and find a new purpose. Adam's son was magically transformed into a hero in order to free his enslaved people, who then gives his power over to his father to save his life. The boy is killed as a result, and Adam, full of rage and vengeance, can't control the power and destroys those responsible, demonstrating that he is incapable of controlling this magic. As a result, he's deemed too dangerous by those who granted the power, who then lock him away until the events of the film. The plot that spins out of this seems confused about who Adam is and what he wants, trying to find the line between him being a reluctant hero or an angry potential weapon of mass destruction. The need for Johnson's character to be likable resulted in a lack of commitment to potentially darker aspects of the character that may have given it more interest. The movie treats the fact that Adam has no compunction against killing his enemies as his sole negative feature without presenting a compelling argument about why that should be seen as an issue, as the only people he kills are presented as a hostile, aggressive, invading mercenary force, and the sole opposing ideology seems to boil down to just because. More importantly, the movie never defines what it is that Adam wants or needs. As presented, the character has already long since avenged the death of his son, so the film has the larger circumstances surrounding that death resurfaced to create something for the character to be involved in. However, the film never finds an emotional through line for the character, and because of that, the trajectory of his arc is never really clear. An anti-hero is typically depicted as a character that will do something heroic, but only for some sense of personal gain, essentially a questionable person who does something good for questionable reasons. Black Adam is meant to be regarded as an anti-hero, but he only superficially fulfills the role due to his reluctance to immediately jump into the hero role, as none of the character's attitudes or actions presented in the anti-hero mold. When finally revealed, the character implies its story is not about dealing with grief or rage or battling with the inner demons of vengeance or corruptive power, but of finding purpose in honoring his son. None of this has anything to do with the imposed conflict between the idea of heroism and killing one's enemies, which is introduced by an implicitly heroic character whose team is dispersed into the fray by another character that runs a black ops squad of supervillains within the connected universe. None of it makes any real sense, and ultimately none of it matters. The film's story ends up relying on the audience feeling sympathy for Adam in the loss of his son and latching onto the implied father-son relationship that grows between Adam and the young male that later stands in for him, but again, there's very little work done on that relationship beyond a surface-level reproduction of the relationship between the boy and robot stars of Terminator 2. Trying to understand what experience the film wants to create is as troublesome as trying to understand what story it wants to tell. Overall, the film wants to be a spectacle with a number of big action scenes that are meant to impress. However, the action is undone by two unfortunate factors. The first being that Sarah either isn't creative or skilled enough, or simply wasn't allowed to get past the observational aspect of the action and put the audience into the experience of it. This is a film with Michael Bay ambitions that, while able to mimic the look, doesn't know how to replicate the kind of engaging experience that Bay can create. The second problem is that because of the insistence that the Black Adam character be the most powerful thing to have ever existed, there isn't any way to develop genuine tension with its scenes. A half-hearted attempt to quite literally mimic a kryptonite-like weakness in the character falls flat because it's never committed to in a way that serves the substance's dramatic function. Even the single scene in which a depowered Adam is forced to fight his way out of a secure underwater facility through multiple guards in body armor and wielding very dangerous but non-lethal weapons becomes an exercise in straining believability as this not all that impressive 5,000-year-old approaching middle-aged man beats his way past them without assistance. The film can only really generate any tension in its action in scenes where Adam isn't present, with its single token death being undermined by, frankly, contrived bullshit. While the film is ultimately undone by its refusal to embrace its premise, mitigating the intensity of the action experience to get its PG-13 rating and softening the Black Adam character to make him more heroic and likable, the overall experience isn't helped by the fact that the film relies heavily on contrivance to function. When critics say the film felt like it was from the early 2000s, this is likely what they meant. The landscape of blockbuster filmmaking was dominated by films with very simple plots and stories that were only explored on the surface level in order to provide a landscape for a fast-paced and high-intensity action experience. The most difficult aspect of that kind of filmmaking is making the ridiculousness of the material believable enough that the audience can invest in the peril of it all. An audience might suffer a limited number of contrivances if the end experience is seen to be of great enough value. But Black Adam seemed to pile up a number of contrivances too great to maintain the level of believability many audience members felt was necessary to remain invested. For instance, Adam's release from his 5,000-year imprisonment is implied via insert shot to be possible because of a pendant made of the magical bullshit metal the film's heroine is wearing while she reads the spell that releases him. Here you have a plethora of contrivances to accept just to make this possible. That the Elder Wizard, so concerned with how dangerous Adam is, would write the instructions for how to release him on the door to his cell. That with a gun to her head, this woman would just start randomly reading something off the floor. That Adam's release is only made possible by the use of the magical bullshit metal, even though neither the character nor the audience could possibly have known that, and that the Elder Wizards would conveniently imprison Adam in the exact same room where they stored the film's magical MacGuffin everyone is looking for. If you really want to stretch the premise a little bit, you can ask why the Wizards would lock Adam away, as dangerous as they believe him to be, without or instead of taking away the powers they granted. If it were as easy as the film presents it for Adam's son to pass them on to him, surely removing them altogether was within their ability. And the way it's presented in the film, Adam is more or less just surrendering himself to them, so it wasn't a matter of having to do something to prevent an impending catastrophe that didn't allow them the time. But if they did that, then the movie couldn't possibly happen. So you have to believe these characters either didn't think of this or left him his powers just in case they were needed later. This feeling of contrivance pervades the film, seemingly present in almost every aspect of the plot right from the beginning with the setup of the film's primary location. The film has a feeling of artificiality about it one could go on about at great length, but that would quickly lose its value as anything other than an exercise in egoistic Monday morning quarterbacking. The point is that the experience this film creates isn't strong enough to overcome the feeling of contrivance in its storytelling. There may be individual moments or scenes in the film that are effective pieces of storytelling, but overall the movie doesn't achieve the effect it's going for in terms of the sheer scale of immersive, thrilling action. That was the trade-off for the less than impressive screenplay, and the failure to deliver on that is what ultimately sunk the film. A contrived screenplay can be an effective bedrock for an overwhelming experience. Without that, all you have left is a screenplay filled with contrivances. Black Adam may find an audience down the road that's willing to stand up and shout its merits from the highest peaks, but its underperformance isn't the result of some kind of conspiracy. Sometimes a movie, for whatever reasons, just doesn't land upon release. That's a commercial issue. If the film is going to get an artistic reevaluation, it's going to have quite a hill to climb. A production put on hold for over a decade, a dated screenplay filled with contrivances forced to fit into a new connected universe paradigm, a journeyman director without an artistic dog in the race, and a producer star prioritizing what they think the audience wants to see over the integrity of the storytelling, all combine to create a film without brains, balls, or soul. It's a mechanically well-produced film whose desire to appeal to the broadest audience makes sure that it fails to deliver on any of its intentions. All stories are works of contrivance, but the goal is to make the contrivance invisible, and on top of everything else, it would appear that Black Adam failed to do that. Audiences want the stories they're told to be transportive, but for that to happen, they have to be, in some way or another, believable. That's a trust the audience has with the storyteller, and if that trust is lost, it's almost impossible to get it back. Contrivance is not a 4-letter word. You need contrivance to make storytelling work. When the audience starts throwing the word back at you, you have to consider whether or not you've crossed a line and need to be rescued. And in this case, as he continually says in the film, Black Adam was clearly not the hero to call, and no amount of sympathy for the devil can change that. This has been the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion. As always, I have been Gray, and if you like what you heard, you can leave a tip at our Ko-Fi page at ko-fi.com/notthepopular-opinion. You can follow us on Twitter at @only_Gray, and don't forget our main page at notthepopularopinion.wordpress.com, where you'll find more great articles just like this. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if you're as good to others as you are to yourself, we might just make it through this mess. See ya.